Hello there, everyone. I hope everyone can see and hear me okay. Please just let me know or type in the comment if you can. Um, my name is Rachel Doyle, and I'm a student at Durham University studying BA Primary Education. Just a little bit of background about me quickly. I'm in my third study at the moment, but I have taken a year abroad, and I'm studying in Uppsala University in Sweden, where I'm taking a lot of education theory modules and sociology of education modules, which is really broadening my knowledge and experience with teaching. So so this presentation here is something I worked on last summer. So yes, we'll get started with that. So for every single type of educating practitioner, the COVID-19 lockdown could be argued as one of the greatest challenges of our careers. With lockdown happening so suddenly, all types of teachers were thrown into the deep end, faced with online learning during an extremely uncertain time. Today, I'm going to be presenting myself and Professor Ben Watsy's research paper, wherein we analysed a national survey from teachers exploring the effects of lockdown on their workload, well-being, and experiences with EdTech and distance learning. Just the next slide, please. We conducted a national survey of 3,404 practitioners across all phases of education to investigate how teachers were feeling surrounding their profession during the pandemic and what challenges they faced. Our aim was to collect teachers' experiences of lockdown surrounding their workload, well-being, and experiences with EdTech. It was also an opportunity to gain insight from a unique experience and to hopefully create some positivity in such a fearful time. The insight gained will be so useful for practitioners post-lockdown in designing ways to connect with children through distance learning in instances such as long-term absence and school holidays. Next slide, please. So we will start with the workload aspect of the survey. The findings displayed that teachers reported an overall increase of workload during the lockdown. This graph here shows us the average number of hours spent on each activity by phase of education. So secondary teachers spent the most time with planning and preparation. Tertiary teachers spent a large amount of time on administrative work, and primary school teachers spent a lot more time communicating with parents than other types of teachers, which is, I suppose, to be expected. So whilst there is variation, it's clear to see that across all phases, teachers spent more time on administrative work than actual teaching. Planning and preparation also took up a large proportion of teachers' time due to the fact that now planning involves sourcing suitable teaching resources and platforms for delivering lessons online. And teachers felt that they were extremely unprepared for delivering lessons online, which is an aspect I'm going to revisit throughout this presentation because it's very important to focus on. It's also worth noting the teachers only spent 7.5 hours a week actually teaching, which, as teachers will know, is a lot less teaching time than you would have in a normal week. Just the next slide, please. Looking at this table here, we can really see the decline spent on actual teaching time. So if you just look at the top of the graph, you can see that 60% of practitioners are spending less than 5 hours a week actually teaching. And then if you go down to the bottom of the graph, the middle of the graph where it says 16 to 20, you can see that 9% of practitioners are spending over 20 hours teaching, which would be, the normal amount of teaching time in a week. So that's a very low proportion of practitioners who are actually teaching for the normal amount of time in a week. Just the next slide, please. So here are some additional comments from teachers surrounding how they felt about their workload during the lockdown. So along with the questionnaire, teachers were also given the opportunity to write some additional comments about their feelings towards their workload and their well-being and experiences with EdTech. And here, these comments are two of many expressing similar concerns about being exhausted, stressed, and underappreciated. We can see here that they've referenced their workload being 200%, and they're working extra hours unpaid. Very negative comments towards their workload. Just the next slide there, please. So the next section of the paper examines teacher well-being. So before the pandemic had even begun, there was global concern about the mental health and well-being of teachers. And it was expected that the school closure was going to add strain to their jobs. This research was one of the first to get in touch with teachers to inquire about how they were coping, which I'm quite proud of, because it seems that no one actually asked. We focused on two key dimensions of teachers' occupational well-being: their subjective well-being and their social well-being. The questionnaire used an 11-point scale measuring 9 items. And we asked teachers to rate how often they had certain feelings on a scale from 0, which was never, to 10, which was all the time, with scores ranging from 0 to 3 as not often, and 7 to 10 as often, was how we broke it up. So as you can see with this graph, overall, the questionnaire results were actually quite positive. You can see that 46% said they were happy and cheerful most of the time, which is great. But what stands out to me here is that teachers felt as though what they were doing was positive and worthwhile, with 58% saying that they felt this way often. Conversely, however, the lowest indicator of well-being was teachers' energy levels, which makes sense with the increased workload aspect of our findings. Only 1/4 of teachers said they felt energetic often. Again, there's variation across stages of education, with secondary school teachers showing the highest level of well-being and tertiary teachers showing the lowest level of well-being. Next slide, please. So, in my opinion, the written comments in this section the teachers gave us in response to the survey were the most insightful, and this is where we really got kind of a view into how teachers were actually coping and what they were going through during this period that was very hard for everyone. It seemed as though teachers jumped at the opportunity to express their emotions towards this topic, as it appears, like I said before, that hardly anyone had asked them how they were feeling yet. Overall, respondents to the survey gave quite varied answers on well-being. Teachers expressed a mix of emotions. Here we can see in, I think it's the second comment, that emotion fluctuation was described as a yo-yo. Despite the positive results of the questionnaire, teachers conveyed very negative emotions in the written comments, expressing feelings of fear, confusion, depression, anxiety, anger, frustration, with one teacher even disclosing that they felt regularly suicidal, which is obviously very serious. Teachers felt there was an inconsistency surrounding what was expected of them, with government guidelines constantly changing, with the expectation that they would just know how to deal with it and know what to do, with no prior experience of this situation or no prior training. Also, if we can remember, initially teachers didn't receive a great reception from the media and the public during the lockdown. Reports of lazy teachers doing nothing from certain media sources emerged, along with criticism surrounding teachers' reluctance for school to start back because they felt scared and unsafe because of the virus. And I feel as though this is a really important aspect to focus on, as when teachers are faced with possibly the most challenging thing they've come across in their careers, still they're underappreciated and they receive negativity and they receive scrutiny, which no doubt will have contributed to a low level of mental health and well-being during an already challenging time. Next slide, please. Could I get the next slide, please? Perfect. Thank you very much. Oh, sorry, that was my fault. Sorry. Could we go back one? Sorry. Yes, perfect. This one. Thank you. So in addition to the negativity and the scrutiny, there was also the feeling among teachers that they'd been overlooked, abandoned, and neglected. Practitioners began to feel very distant from their pupils and colleagues, with a lot of comments about how frustrating it is to have to try and adapt school for online purposes with no training in how to do so. In the midst of all this chaos, however, teachers' priorities are still very focused on the welfare of their students. Here we can see teachers are expressing concern about their students' learning and educational progress, especially surrounding the lower ability students who will find it hard to engage with this online teaching, and pupils with important exams coming up, such as GCSE students. We also received comments from teachers exhibiting their efforts to cause minimal disruption to children's education and them going above and beyond to give their pupils as much support as they possibly can. We can see that here when they said that they gave children paperwork when they couldn't have access to the IT facilities, and there was even comments about teachers bringing packages door to door for pupils to learn. So they were really, really committed into doing their jobs, even in such a challenging time. Next one, please. Sorry about that, Alex. However, thankfully, experiences have not been negative for all teachers. Some have actually had rather positive experiences. They've been able to spend more time with their families, and one teacher has even commented that their workload had been easier to manage. They feel as though there are positives to be taken in regard to how much has been discovered about distance learning, which is something that's really, really important about this research. They feel as though it will create opportunities that will be very useful for education in the future, and the children will have benefited from this experience and this kind of learning in the long run. So really, teachers are understanding what they've learned from this experience and what skills that they have enhanced in this online teaching, and it's really good that they're recognizing that. Next slide, please. So this last section of the paper focuses on teachers' experience with EdTech. So we found that along with the additional workload, the need for teachers to use EdTech to connect with students was a huge source of anxiety for them. 64% reported having little or no previous experience in online teaching. 26% of the respondents said they felt, only 26% of them said they felt confident to any extent using EdTech to deliver lessons online, which is obviously quite low. 43% of teachers found online teaching stressful, and only a tiny proportion said that they actually had better interactions with their students online. So again, whilst there may be a variation among different types of teachers and their experiences with online teaching, it seems primary and secondary teachers were the least likely to have previous experience in delivering online lessons in comparison to tertiary teachers. Primary teachers were also the least confident in using EdTech. Next slide, please. So in their written comments again, teachers had both positive and negative experiences with EdTech, experiences that educators and policymakers will definitely be able to learn from. Positively, some practitioners experienced better engagement and classroom management with pupils, with teachers commenting they had some really enjoyable and intellectual discussions online, with students producing stunning work and focusing more upon quality within the lockdown. That was a direct quote. Teachers are also recognizing that new skills can be adopted for future teaching, as I was saying before, with one teacher saying it has opened up opportunities for new and more efficient ways of working in some aspects of teaching. Teachers also noticed that attendance was better with online school, and it was a good way to keep children connected with each other and their learning outside of the school building. So this type of learning does suit some children, and obviously it has made them become more, go to class more, become more attentive and really engage in their lessons, which is an interesting finding. They also felt that teachers also felt that they were able to give better feedback more quickly, with them saying that they can give personalized feedback within 48 hours, and that they've been able to have much more meaningful one-to-one interactions with students online, especially quieter students, when they've had that kind of private space online to have their feedback given. Conversely, on the negative side, many teachers commented about how they struggled to learn to use unknown programs with minimal training, and voiced how they felt very frustrated when they made mistakes live in front of their pupils, which is understandably, it is understandably frustrating. And this came from the lack of training, because they needed to learn how to do it on the job. And again, whilst there was some concern for children not possessing the adequate infrastructure and resources for online teaching, the government didn't actually anticipate that teachers might also have the same issue, and not have access to the devices and connection they require for teaching. Teachers commented that they had a lack of resources, no one to help with new technology, glitchy internet connection, and no webcam, meaning the learners couldn't even see the teacher. Something very poignant in the comments was the teachers felt as though they were thrown in the deep end with little training. That came up quite a few times, that thrown in the deep end aspect of how they felt. There was also several concerns about their students, like I said before, about students with important exams coming up, and also the concern for younger students who need a more kinesthetic approach. That form of online teaching didn't suit younger pupils. It was very hard to teach, reception children, early years children with this form of online teaching. Could I get the next slide, please? So as I've discussed throughout this presentation, there is really a lot to be learned from this experience regarding conclusions and implications for practice for teachers and policymakers. Firstly, we've discovered how resilient our teachers really are. They rose to the challenge and held a great sense of pride in their work. They coped remarkably well under very, very challenging conditions and an increased workload. They also went above and beyond to help their students when they needed it most. They deserve to be positively recognised and praised for this. Hopefully, in the future, the public, the media and the government will give our teachers much more positive recognition for the important work they do. Throughout this experience, teachers have also gained insight and knowledge into how students and education as a whole can benefit from online learning. Preparing and putting platforms and resources in place for students who, for example, experience long-term absence due to physical illness or mental health reasons. This will be so beneficial for those students and the many students that experience these things to have access to their learning online. Along with this, online platforms will also be very beneficial for pupils during school holidays to keep students connected to each other and to their learning. However, along with these online learning foundations being put in place, we've also discovered how important it is that teachers receive regular training in using EdTech, because the teachers had no idea what to do, which contributed to their stress and low level of well-being. So they need this training in EdTech in their initial teacher education, the stage I'm at right now, and in their CPD. So for teachers who are already teaching, they need that consistent training with EdTech, because it's always going to be a part of our education system. Along with this, not only the students, but the teachers need to be provided with the appropriate equipment, such as internet connection, software, and devices to deliver online teaching if they need to do so, if a situation like the pandemic, or if they need to teach online for children who need it, if that situation arises, they need to be provided with adequate software, because not all of them have it. We really have learned an awful lot conducting and analysing our research, and I'm hopeful that practitioners, policymakers and the government will take findings like these into consideration to improve teacher wellbeing and give them the training, support and recognition they need and deserve. I hope you learned something from our research, and I hope you enjoyed listening to me talk about it. And thank you very much for listening, and if you have any questions, please fire away. I'd love to answer some questions if I can. I think there's some questions in the chat, maybe. Oh, I think that just got answered. Um, yeah, I think that question that was just asked about uh, student-teacher relationships online is a really interesting one. And there was a section in our paper that focused on this online teaching being very good for parental engagement between primary school pupils, especially because the teachers, to connect with the primary school pupils, had to get in touch with their parents. So that was good. Um, just, just from my own experience as a student, um, studying during this lockdown, um, I found that lecturers and professors were always very available, and they were always very, they wanted you to email, they wanted you to get in touch. They were always very available for your questions and your queries and things. And I didn't feel as though, personally, I didn't feel as though I didn't feel a disconnect from my in-person teaching to my online teaching with my teachers, because again, I think it's a testament to how committed they are to their jobs, and they made themselves available at all times for students in this very difficult time. So I think, yes, good teacher-student relationships are crucial, and I think teachers understand that, and they'll go out of hours to provide for their students, and I think again they should be recognised for that. Yeah, unless anyone else wants to ask any more questions, even some personal ones from a student perspective, I don't mind anything. I could just, let me see. I'll just wait another minute or so. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, and if anyone, I think my email, if anyone wanted to contact me about anything, my email was on the presentation. It's just, I'll just say it just in case you didn't get it. It's just rachel.a.doyle@durham.ac.uk. But it was on the presentation. So. Yeah, that's great. I think there's probably no more questions there. Sorry that didn't take up the full time. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. And thank you very much for listening. Thank you.